Hi, this is Simon Upstall and welcome to another tutorial for Apple Motion. And today we're going to be making a demon portal, something like this. Now, if you're a big fan of demons or indeed of portals, then you might be a little bit disappointed because we're not going to make something terribly photorealistic and certainly not something that's going to make it into the next Marvel film. But there will be quite a lot of interesting techniques that I think you'll find useful. So let's get going. Okay, for this project I'm going with 1920-1080, 24 frames a second and a duration of 5 seconds. And the first thing I want to do is come over to the library and grab clouds. So with my clouds I want to add a mask, which is why I've zoomed out like that. And then I'm just going to mask off the bottom of the frame like this. Make sure that the mask is much wider than the frame. So for the height we're going to go with 540. As I say, don't care about the width as long as it's wide enough. And I'm going to come over here, reset its X position. Let's have its Y position as -540. So the key to this effect is that we are now going to add filters and stylize and relief. And let me just turn on the overlay. So I'm going to grab this control and I'm going to drag it vertically like that. And you can see we've got these very interesting sort of mountainous peaks and they run downwards like that. And they animate and they look like they have some sort of 3D depth. So let's just set this relief up properly. We need to make sure to zero out that back value. This Y value can be anything you want as long as it's above the maximum. So the maximum I think is something like 365 or something. Anyway, as long as it's more than that, it's good. So to complete the effect, we are going to come to this group and we are going to add distortion and polar. And this is how it basically works. Now, there's lots of things we need to fix, but hopefully you can see we've got this nice effect that kind of radiates inwards and has this intriguing 3D depth to it. So one of the key problems we have is we can see this join here, and that's no good to us. So we actually need to organize ourselves a little bit better. So we need to make quite a lot of new groups. So I'm going to take these clouds and I'm going to group it. So right-click group, and I'm also going to group it again. So right-click group. So we've got a group within the group. And I'm going to take my relief and put it onto this group here. So if we then take this group here and we clone it, so right click, make clone layer, and then we come to filters and tiling and offset, and we set the horizontal offset to 50, we can now mask off this new layer to hide the join on the layer beneath. So what we're going to do is we're also going to group this clone. So right click group, because we have to mask the group, not the clone itself. So let's turn off our polar while we do this. So I'm going to select the rectangle mask tool and I'm going to draw out a mask like this. Now what we're actually interested in is repeating the edges. We're not worried about that middle. So we're going to select that and then we're going to invert the mask. And then we need to feather the mask inwards just so we hide those edges like that. Something like that's fine. If we turn back on our polar, you'll see we've almost completely hidden that join there, but we can still see it. And the reason for that is rather odd, which is that somehow or other the alpha channel of this new group is not completely opaque. So if we select the group and we come to color and levels and we switch to alpha, and then we grab this white value and drag it all the way to the left there, you can see that sorts the problem out. So I'm going to call this enclosing group inner, and then we want an outer. So we're going to duplicate the group we've just made, and let's call it outer. So we need to go in the opposite direction with this. So I'm going to just turn off that inner while we work, and let's come back into everything here. Let's come back into our rectangle mask. That's the mask for the original clouds, and let's set its position to 0. And then we also need to come to the relief and we need to do the opposite direction. So instead of a positive value for the back, we're going with a negative value like this. So then what we can do is we can mask this result over the top of our original. Let's turn our original back on again. Let's select this and let's select the circle mask tool, holding down the Shift and Option keys, draw out a circular mask like that. and then we just need to invert it, and then we can feather that a bit like this to hide the join. So what am I going to do? I'm going to come into my original clouds and give it a little bit more detail. So let's go down to 16 for the scale on horizontal and vertical. You can see that's given us quite a bit more spiky detail in there. And for my clouds of the outer, it's getting a little bit confusing in here. Let's close down the inner. Here's the outer clouds. Let's set these to 12. So then I'm going to make a new group to drop both of these into. New group, drop both of those into that group. And while I remember it, I just need to drag in a color solid behind everything. So we're compositing against black. Turn this black like so. So this new group that we've made, I'll call it main. Let's stylize it a bit by coming to filters, glow and overdrive. This is an absolutely crazy filter. I'm going to set the size down to 1 and the rotation I'm going to 0 out. And it gives us this really rather nice flicker. So I'm not worried about the outer glow, but let's just change that inner glow color to something a bit more interesting. So a number of other things I want to do. I want to darken down the middle. So above this outer group, I'm going to make a new group. I'm going to select the circle tool, hold down the Shift and Option key and draw out a circle like that. Fill, no outline. So we want to make this color black. We obviously want to center it up as well. So what's our size? Let's go for 500 for the size. And let's reduce or have a negative feather like this, just so we're darkening down the inside of everything like that. So that's working pretty well. We're seeing a little bit of a join between the two of them, and I think we can improve on that. So I'm going to make a new group, and I'm going to bring in clouds into that. And I'm going to use the Circle Mask tool, Shift and Option, draw out a mask like this. Make sure to center it up, and I think it needs to be a little bit larger because we're worried about this area here probably. So let's go for 540, I think. Let's add to it a stylize and crystallize, and maybe set that size up to 16. And let's duplicate this mask, right click, duplicate, set its mask blend mode to subtract, and then just reduce the radius. Let's go for something like 450 for that. So we're not actually going to be seeing this element, but it is going to be a displace source. So let's call it that, and we can turn it off. So then if we come to our main group here, and we come to filters and distortion and refraction, and we add in our displace source, and then we crank the softness all the way up, you can see we're getting some interesting displacement there. If we just turn that on and off, we're fudging those edges there. So I think I need to adjust a little bit because I'm not actually targeting this bit quite as much as I wanted to. So that original circular mask, I'm just going to bring it into sort of there. That's sort of 525 or something. And I'm going to take my main group and I'm going to add a circular mask to it. So Shift and Option, draw out a mask like that, come to about there, I think. And again, center it up. So this mask size, probably 525 was quite good for that. And let's feather this out like this, just so we're getting this nice vignette effect. So there's more we can do. I'm going to come back down into my inner group, all the way down into the group with the clouds in it. And into that, I'm going to add generators and caustics. And that's pretty interesting already. I'm just going to copy that rectangle mask off the clouds. So I'm going to hold down the Option key and drag it onto the caustics. And you can see it's giving these nice sort of dramatic spikes like that. I think the caustic speed is too much, so let's set that down to 0.2 and maybe the size down to 0.1. And I think we can do that same thing with our outer. So let's copy that. So Command C, come into our outer, let's close down the inner, come all the way down into this clouds group. Just above the clouds, let's paste our caustics like that. And the reason we're not seeing anything is that in this case, we need to move our mask. So let's set its position to be 0. And now we've got those streaks on the outside. I think they're all a bit too much there. I think I might just take the opacity way down for these, just so we have only a little bit of that. And let us do one final thing, which is to take our main group and make a clone of it. Let us come to filters and color and threshold. So what I want to do is I want to pick out only the really bright bits. So I'm going to just increase the threshold a bit like that. Maybe increase the softness a bit to 0.5. And then I'm going to take this group and I'll set its blend mode to color dodge. And you can see that rather dramatically gives us these bright flashing highlights like that. And we can probably just dial them back a little bit like so. So what else do I want to do? Oh yes, I want to come to my main group. And I want to add filters, distortion, and bulge. And let's set the bulge amount to 520. And then you'll notice that if I adjust this scale, we can sort of do a bit of a reveal. So let's actually do that. Let's come to the first frame. Let's set the scale to 2 and keyframe it. And let's come to frame 80 and set that to negative 0.5. Yeah. I think something like that. Just want to come into the keyframe editor, select that last keyframe, right click, ease in, which will make the animation a bit smoother. So then we get that sort of reveal of the center like that. And finally, let's do a little bit of color correction. So I can't do this with levels. I've got to use curves for this. So let's just darken down the shadows a bit like that. And maybe just pump up the highlights a bit like that. So it hasn't really worked out quite the way I wanted. I don't think I'll waste too much of your time on this, but you've seen quite a lot of techniques there that I'm sure you can adapt and make into something quite interesting. So thanks very much for watching. I'll see you again soon.